All shall bid farewell to one, and that person alone will witness the miracle.
When Aglaea recited that line back in 3.1, I knew that the story would not end well. I knew everybody except for one person would die, but still, nothing prepared me for the tear-jerking moment that was the entirety of the 3.3 quest. The end of the Flamechase journey was here, and everybody died. All of the Crisis heirs did, except for Finon. Or not Finon, considering the fact that his name was redacted in that last scene in the Vortex of Genesis and how chill he looked when his supposedly dead friend walked into the place looking very much alive. But we'll get to that in a bit, because now we're starting from the beginning, right after Annex's death and Castris' departure to the Netherrealm. With the Risen and Death core flames returned, the Crisis heirs were only 2 core flames short from completing the Flamechase journey. Technically, they only needed to fight one last titan, Aquila the Sky Titan, because Kefali had long surrendered their core flame and had been kept under the Council of Elders' protection. So they had a little bit of downtime before they went to fight the Sky Titan. During that downtime, Trailblazer went to Styxia to go treasure hunting with Cipher, and that's where they learned how the power of the Trickery Titan worked. Using some hints and mental suggestions, Cipher made Trailblazer and Mem believe that the Flame Reaver was sneaking up behind them. Those hints were a piece of torn black cloth that the two found on the ground, along with the sound of approaching footsteps. This piece of cloth was similar to the Flame Reaver's black cloth that they found at the grove, so when the two found it, they immediately thought of the Sword Master. Combine that with the footsteps, they expected to see the Flame Reaver when they turn around.
Lies are what Zagreus is best at. If everyone believes in a lie, then it becomes reality.
This is the core of the Trickery Titan's power. As depicted in legends, Zagreus is known as a two-faced god that is both smiling and crying. Lies and truth in the world are two sides of the same coin. Just like Thanatos, who oversees the cycle of life and death, and Nicanor, who protects the world through strife, there's also duality to trickery. As Aglaea had revealed to Annexa, she believed that Finon would be that prophesied leader of the Crisis heirs, the only one whose raging fire could rival the Sky Titan. So in preparation for that battle and for the potential encounters with the Flame Reaver in the future, Finon asked Trailblazer and Mem to help him train. He had also commissioned Cartonus to forge him a new weapon, a weapon that looks way too similar to the Flame Reaver's sword, albeit more intact. Solabis, a character that we met later in the story, a character who had lived for at least 1,000 years, commented on this as well, saying that Finon's sword looked familiar to him. When Finon said that it was only recently forged, Solabis simply replied, "Perhaps." Interesting, but he wouldn't elaborate. Another thing that I found interesting in the sequence at the Grove was the mention of Cyrene and her interest in divination, which was brought up by Finon after he learned that Mem was trying to master divination in secret. While Finon had never believed in the future predicted using cards and bones, he had always been captivated by the way Cyrene revealed her divination in the past. In fact, he still carried around one of the cards that Cyrene once used for divination. And guess what? The card looked just like Finon's character card in the SF written book, if not exactly it, which strongly implies that the other Crisis heir cards are part of the same deck of divination cards. This talk about cards and divination reminded Finon of Ornyx's riddle that they had to solve back then. What weighed heavier than Amphorius' fate? Unfortunately, before Finon could discuss it further, they were interrupted by some people in black. In the meantime, Danhang had traveled with Lygus to Yenisopolis to see the broken express car and smelled something suspicious from the Theros. Lygus said that not only could he fix the express car, but also he could open a passage for the crew to leave the planet. That's weird, Danhang said, because the problem was supposedly with Aquila, who was not allowing anyone to explore worlds beyond the sky. This conversation was also cut short with the arrival of the same people in black whom Lygus referred to as some parties who would not be pleased should the crew refuse to leave Amphorius and cease their support for the Flamechase journey. These people, who also surrounded the trio at the Grove, were sent by Kainis to make sure that the Crisis heirs stayed where they were while she executed her plan to kill Aglaea. It was mentioned back in 3.0 that Kainis used to be an assassin during the era of the Crisis War. She was part of this group called the Cleaners. She was the leader of them, responsible for the death of many Crisis heirs. When Trinan brought that up, I just knew that this was going to play a part in the story sooner or later, and as sad as I was when it happened, the story delivered. Now, while it seems like kindness was the ultimate winner in the millennia-long tug-of-war between the Chrysos heirs and the Council of Elders, Aglaea's death was in fact a trap woven together by the Gold Weaver, a trap that kindness unwittingly stepped into. Aglaea knew that her death was long overdue. She was a walking corpse, preserving her mortal body with medications, stretching her humanity thin over the course of 1,000 years because she had her reasons. She needed to make sure that Finon was ready before she could retreat behind the scene. And she knew that dying peacefully was never an option that would simply give rise to the cleaners that had been lurking in the shadow. Her death should not go to waste. At least it should benefit the Flamech's journey, better still if it could uproot the threats of the cleaners. And so Aglaea feigned weakness to lure them out. As expected, kindness took the bait. She barged into the bath and cornered Aglaea. However, she had not planned to attack Aglaea head-on. She knew that she stood no chance against the demigod. Instead, she used the occupants as her hostage. One in particular was the little girl that Aglaea had helped before. If you remember, when Aglaea was running around the city to cleanse the corruption brought by Nikador's Titankins, she came across this little girl whose bracelet had fallen into the rift. That girl was already unable to speak and hear to begin with, and now kindness threatened to take her eyes if Aglaea didn't surrender. And so Aglaea did. She surrendered just as she had planned all along. While kindness thought she had won, that she had seized power from Aglaea, Aglaea's death brought the Flamech's journey closer to its goal and the people banding together to punish the cleaners for their crime. Aglaea revealed all this in a letter she wrote to Finon. That's the irony in all of this. Kindness had repeatedly accused Aglaea of losing her humanity, the erosion of which slowly turning Aglaea into a tyrant who wallows in extravagance and greed. But in the end, it was only because Aglaea still had her humanity that the murder attempt was successful. Kindness could not go toe-to-toe against a demigod, but she could count on Aglaea to still hold on to her humanity, that the demigod would lay down her own life to keep a helpless girl safe. Soon the news of Aglaea's death reached everyone. I remember feeling so helpless at this point, hoping that it was not true, that somehow Aglaea had survived. But then the group chat popped up and the grabber maker said that the internet was down due to Aglaea's passing. And with her last remaining divinity, Aglaea contacted two people. One was Cartonus to let him know that he could start pampering her divinity into the bracelet that the little girl had given her before, in hopes that it could help the Chrysos heirs in their final mission. The other was Cipher, the last person who came to Aglaea's mind before her death. Aglaea and Cipher had known each other for over a millennia. Despite Cipher's absence for the most part of the story, they used to be close. If you go to the official Chrysos heirs wiki, their relationship is stated as partners, eventually partner in self-denial on Cipher's part for what I'm about to explain now. Cipher used to frequent Aglaea's clothing shop in Okima, hoping to buy her finest clothes in exchange for stolen treasure. At the time, Aglaea was already a demigod of Nestia, albeit much younger, I suppose before she was left to shoulder the responsibility of leading the Chrysos heirs by Seridra. During one particular visit, Aglaea gave Cipher a pair of boots in exchange for the treasure she brought. She said these shoes were once blessed by the Trickery Titan themselves, granting super speed to anyone who wore them. Now, Bartolos, who was listening to this tale, quickly debunked that legend. Those shoes were not blessed by Zagreus, he would knew that because he was in fact Zagreus themselves, rendered to that form after surviving the trickery trial thanks to Cipher's lie. And I'm still not sure if the legend was indeed wrong. Maybe it was, and the only reason Cipher could have super speed was because she believed in that lie so much that it became reality. Or maybe it was not wrong, and instead of the coins of whimsy, those shoes were the actual source of Cipher's super speed. Unfortunately, there was no way for Cipher to fact-check with Aglaea anymore, because soon she came face-to-face with Aglaea's golden nymph and learned that Aglaea had reached her finish line. If you talk to Aglaea in Okima and ask her about Cipher, she would say that Cipher used to be a close companion of the Chrysos heirs. However, she grew distant, spending more and more of her time wandering beyond the city. Being able to see her face-to-face became a rare luxury. Aglaea wondered if this was because of the burden of the prophecy. Perhaps being a demigod of trickery was too much for her. Or perhaps Aglaea had somehow offended her, the offense so irreversible that Cipher decided to leave. So, in that final moment, Aglaea apologized to Cipher. Unlike her usual self, who was reluctant to be candid even in Finon's memory, the Gold Weaver simply said that she was sorry. She had tried to figure out where she had gone wrong and failed. Perhaps it's the way Aglaea's voice cracked, perhaps it's the sincerity and desperation in her voice, but Cipher almost gave in then. See, knowing what we know now, knowing the reason Cipher had been avoiding Aglaea and basically removed herself from the Chrysos heirs, she almost gave away her lie in that moment, almost risking the illusion that had been protecting Okima to break. Remember how the power of trickery works? If everyone believes in a lie, then it becomes reality. More than 1,000 years ago, sometime after Cipher became a demigod of trickery, long before she separated herself from the Chrysos heirs, she spent half a year being an apprentice at Catholic priestly court. No, not to be a Catholic priest, surely. Her only goal was to steal a precious gem said to be a fragment peeled from the Dawn device. It was when she finally got her hands on this gem that she learned the truth about the Dawn device itself. The truth was that Evernight would eventually fall on Okima. However, for the next 300 years, the Dawn device would function to protect the city, safeguarding the Chrysos heirs in their flamechase journey. Meaning, in 300 years since then, the Dawn device would stop working. It should have gone out of commission 700 years prior to the start of Amphoria's quest in 3.0. It should have, but Cipher would not let that happen, and so she tricked all of Amphorius to believe otherwise. Following the passing of Chaplain Phoros, the priest from whom Cipher learned this truth, she took the identity of his successor and announced to the citizens of Okima that the Dawn device would safeguard the holy city forever. Since the only other person who knew the truth had died and carefully had gone into slumber, Cipher easily tricked everyone into believing this lie. And the thing about Cipher's lies is that the people she's lying to must believe in the lie completely. There can be no room for doubt. If there's just one person that started doubting the fact, the illusion would fall apart. As we've seen with Trailblazer, the woman the fake Flame Reaver started talking about fish in Styxia and meowing like Cipher. Because of that, because she needed to make sure that the illusion lasted for as long as the Chrysos heirs needed to complete their mission, Cipher left Okima. So in that last conversation with Aglaea, hearing Aglaea's voice crack as she apologized to her, Cipher must have wanted to tell her the truth. Aglaea had never offended her. Aglaea didn't have to apologize for anything. It's just that Aglaea was too good at reading hearts, stayed too long around her, and she might find out the truth. Cipher couldn't afford that. Cipher had never abandoned her duty as a Chrysos heir. She had been obsessively hunting for treasure, collecting wealth that she would never spend because she had to stay alive. With all the wealth in the world, surely she wouldn't have to worry about petty change, thus steering far away from her prophesied death. As long as she stayed alive, the lie would go on, and the lie must go on so that Aglaea's beloved holy city would not plunge into darkness. And the worst part is, Aglaea died never knowing that. She died believing that she had somehow angered Cipher so badly that Cipher chose to turn her back from the Flamechase journey. That last person that she thought of before Kindness killed her, that last lingering regret, had always been a lie. And it was only with the death of the Gold Weaver that Cipher could return to the city, lending her support for the Flamechase journey for the last time, protecting Cathlic's core flame while the others left to defeat Aquila. While Aglaea's final plan did work in gathering the support of the people, making them band together to punish the council members responsible for her death, Kindness was still on the loose. Finon worried that she might try to do something with Cathlic's core flame while he was gone to fight Aquila, so he went to Cipher and asked her to do everything in her power to protect it. Cipher agreed and revealed to Finon that Kindness was not even their biggest threat at the moment. It was actually the Flame Reaver who had been kept at bay by Aglaea's golden threat. This revelation should not come as a surprise to us. Aglaea was that strong. She held back Nikado's body double with her golden thread, allowing Finon to deal the final blow. The communication service in the city was only available thanks to her golden thread. It was also because of her golden thread that she was able to perfectly time the activation of Trivia's Sentry Gate to protect the Dawn device from Nikado's attack. Now that Aglaea's dead, the protection of Okima was in shambles. It was the perfect time for the Flame Reaver to strike. Cipher assured Finon that she got this covered.
Cipher will always get the last laugh. No need to worry about a demigod.
And told him that all he needed to worry about was not dying before he could pay her back. This reminded me of what Maedi had told him before he left for Custom Kremnos.
Remember to stay alive till the final act.
I think the writers were trying to tell us that Finon would be the last man standing. In the meantime, Hyacinth made preparations to get the Chrysos heirs to the sky, the place where her ancestors, the Sky People, once lived. Remember when Danheng and Trailblazer first arrived in Amphorius and Danheng introduced himself as visitors from beyond the sky? Finan was fascinated by it.
Not from above the sky, but beyond it.
He said, because there were people who once lived in the sky of Amphorius, the Sky People, followers of Aquila the Sky Titan. According to legend, Hyacinth would need to get blessings from her ancestors in order to build a rainbow bridge that would connect to the sky. This was their key to reaching Aquila. So Hyacinth went to the Grove, to the Vortex of Genesis, and to Custom Kremnos to complete this preparation, and she received not one but multiple comments from her ancestor that she didn't look like she had it in her to defeat Aquila. Even Cipher, who had lived for over a millennia, made a similar comment when she met Hyacinth.
I figured Celiosi's descendant would be, I don't know, taller, stronger.
Surely there was not some foreshadowing, right? The meeting with Cipher was brief as the demigod was already on her way to leave Okima to complete her mission, but we did get a glimpse of her conversation with Tribi before she left. Cipher gave Tribi an envelope, a parting gift that she said could only be opened after nightfall. This specific instruction implies that Cipher knew that she would die during this mission because remember, Okima was forever stuck in the daytime because of the Dawn device, or so Cipher had made people believe for the last 1,000 years. Saying that Tribi could only open the envelope when it was nighttime means that she knew that Okima would soon fall into darkness. Her illusion would break, and it was most likely because the trickster herself would die. One after another, the lies that became the foundation of the Flame's journey started to unravel from this point on. The Sky Warrior from whom Hyacinth was a descendant of was a warrior named Seleuci, commonly known as Seleuci the Day Thunder Knight. Legend has it, Seleuci was the first Chrysos heir that went on a mission to slay the gods. She was the one who pierced the last eye of Aquila and defeated the Titan. However, she quickly realized the problem with it as the sky started to crumble. If the Sky Titan fell, the whole world would fall. So Seleuci decided to merge with the Titan instead, holding up the sky of Amphorius once more, declaring that one day her descendant would return to the sky and reclaim the core flame from her. Part of this legend seemed contradictory with what Tribi remembered of the actual event. Unfortunately, due to their eroding memories, they could not verify the truth. So Hyacinth made it her mission to uncover the truth behind this legend using Mem's help. While it is true that Seleuci merged herself with the Titan as the sky was collapsing, the warrior who did that out of compassion for the people had hardened because of what came after. Her battle against Aquila started the Chrysos War. The Sky People started killing each other, some even employed Kindness and the Cleaners to get rid of one another. Seeing this, Seleuci started punishing them, sentencing the Sky People to be thrown into the boiling streams of Golden Pool at the Sky Fortress, teaching them the true meaning of unity. Hyacinth's real ancestor was one of these people. Just before she was thrown into her death, she begged for Seleuci's mercy. Using the fact that she also had golden blood coursing through her body, she tried to appeal to the human Titan. In exchange for sparing her life, that nameless Chrysos heir promised that Seleuci's epic would be passed down through generations, immortalized through her descendants. She also said that one day her descendants would return to the sky to prove to Seleuci that even imperfect mortals could bear the weight of the world.
Interesting.
Seleuci said, and hello there, Mavica. Fancy seeing you here as yet another embodiment of a sun deity. I would recognize that voice anywhere. And so Seleuci spared that Chrysos heir's life, and she awaited the arrival of her descendant to mock them for the falsehood buried deep in their lineage. Hyacinth was not a descendant of a great warrior who started the war against the gods. She was a descendant of a nameless Chrysos heir who begged for mercy before Seleuci. Her lineage was a result of a pardon Seleuci made on a whim. Cipher's comment about Hyacinth not being as tall and strong as Seleuci made sense now. However, this revelation did not break Hyacinth's resolve. Together with the Chrysos heirs and Seleuci's past companions, Solabis and Lunabis, she charged forward and fought the human Titan. And here's the thing about fighting a deity whose fortress is built up in the sky. There is a risk of falling from high places. And that's what happened during the fight. It was Aglaea, the very last drop of her divinity, that protected the Chrysos heirs from falling into the boiling golden pool below. While Aglaea had wished for her dead body to not be shown to the public, we still witnessed her death on screen. The bracelet that had suspended the platform mid-air could not be retrieved in the end, and it fell into the boiling liquid gold below. As prophesied,
I shall have my final bath in warm and radiant gold.
the sound of the battle resounded all the way to Styxia, letting Cipher know that the Chrysos heir's mission was closer to the finish line. She had chosen this place to lure both the cleaners and the Flame Reaver. She proudly proclaimed to the Flame Reaver that she had Kafli's core flame with her, taunting him to catch her if he could. The Flame Reaver bought into this claim and started chasing her all over Styxia. It's interesting to note how the Flame Reaver acted much differently than he was before. He was speaking in full sentences back at the Grove and even having a lengthy conversation with Kradoros at Yanasopolis, but now he could barely speak a full sentence, which is a complete opposite of Mem, who started out speaking in broken sentences to now being very fluent. Suspicious? I think so. Loudly declaring that she had Kafli's core flame turned out to be a lie. Cipher noted how easy it was to fool the Flame Reaver as he mindlessly chased after her, impressed that someone was finally able to match her speed. However, when she thought that she had finally outrun him, she realized that he had somehow managed to snatch the coin of whimsy that she had around her neck. The Flame Reaver appeared before her, taunting Cipher with that stolen coin, and as prophesied, Cipher leaped forward to catch the coin, unable to depart with that one single coin, walking into her death over petty change. The Flame Reaver fell for Cipher's trick for the third time, getting nothing but a worthless treasure. In the end, Cipher did get the last laugh before he raised his sword and stabbed her. After 1,000 years of avoiding danger, trying to keep herself alive to protect Alchema, Cipher finally met her end. The lie that had sustained the world for 700 years too long finally broke. The mystification of history that was done to avoid the predestined destruction was finally undone. And Cipher did all that to be worthy of Aglaea's trust, something that Aglaea had never deprived her of, something that Cipher had always thought she must earn, something that she eventually heard from Aglaea herself in an illusion conjured up by her own lie. Aglaea never actually talked to her in the end, and Cipher never actually reached out to hold Aglaea's hand. The golden nymph was just a random bug found in Styxia, not the last remnants of Aglaea's divinity, for it had already dissolved in Celios' molten pool of gold. The demigod of trickery died believing in one final lie that granted her a peaceful death. The end of the Flameless journey finally came. Realizing that something had gone wrong in Alchema, Hyacinth chose to merge herself with the sky's authority, upholding the sky once more, protecting the people for as long as Phynon needed to carry the world to the finish line. See, in the same letter that she wrote to Phynon, Aglaea imparted to him what she meant by a perfect vessel for divinity. She didn't mean it literally. Aglaea didn't think that Phynon was flawless. It's that Phynon was always ready to embrace everyone's imperfection and to find their hidden qualities underneath. In that, Phynon was perfect, just as carefully embraced humanity's imperfection. So despite Phynon's relentless pursuit of strife, Aglaea had always believed that Phynon was meant to inherit Kafli's core flame. She trusted Phynon that at the end of the journey, he would let the people decide to initiate the miracle of Genesis. While the Kratos heir were the one burdened with the mission to fulfill the prophecy, the true master of their world were still the people themselves. Before he embarked on the journey to the sky, Phynon honored this trust as he mentally bid farewell to Aglaea and all the departed Kratos heirs. However, now that he was faced with the fact that the entire world had succumbed to the Black Tide, Phynon decided to initiate the miracle of Genesis without waiting for anyone's approval. He had lost so much, he was desperate for it all to just end. So the group rushed down Dawncloud to receive the last core flame, where they ran into Caenis. As unsatisfying as it was, Caenis eventually fell to her death on her own, attacked by one of the Black Tide monsters that surrounded them perhaps, and then realizing that Kafli's core flame was yet another illusion conjured up by Cipher, the group rushed to the vortex of Genesis. The Flame Reaver, who had returned to the city, chased after them down the mountain. This was when Phynon realized that the Flame Reaver's goal was in fact the same as the Kratos heirs, which was the arrival of Era Nova, or as Alexa had concluded, for the world to reset anew. Or so Phynon concluded from what the Flame Reaver was repeatedly muttering like a broken record. Mighty, Castres, Tribi, and eventually Dunhung stayed behind to stall him, buying Phynon a bit more time to reach the vortex of Genesis, where Trinan was waiting with Kafli's core flame. This was where Phynon bid farewell to Trailblazer. The Kratos heirs had never quite figured out what would happen to the Nameless once they initiated the miracle of Genesis. The Nameless were not from Amphorius. Phynon could not risk leaving their fate to chance. He asked the Kremnon guard to guide Trailblazer safely back to Yanasopolis, where the express car, newly repaired by Lycus, would be waiting for them. Believing that the sky's curse had been lifted with the defeat of Aquila, Trailblazer and Dunhung should have a chance to leave Amphorius safely. An interesting choice, I would say, because Trailblazer was supposedly the one who inherited Ornyx's core flame. In theory, should Era Nova arrive and unravel as Anaxa had concluded, Trailblazer would be the Time Titan in the New World. If they left before the miracle of Genesis could be initiated, then who would be shackled to the fate of the Time Titan? If you're thinking of a certain pink puppy, you and I are thinking the same thing. Better still, I think Trailblazer had never inherited the core flame in the first place. Unlike the other Crisis heirs, their picture was never unlocked and archived in the SF written book even after completing Oronis's trial. I think the one who did inherit the core flame was Mem. I mean, think about it. While they were exploring the Sky Fortress, it was Mem who did all the heavy lifting of recovering memories of the past. Even if Trailblazer was not there, even if they were removed from the scene, the memories would still be recovered just fine. Almost as if Trailblazer was not even needed for the Time Authority to work. I've theorized about it in this other video about who I thought would get the core flame and why, so you can check that out and speculate with me. Now, Trina revealed that she had figured out Cipher's riddle. The envelope that she could only open after the nightfall was actually Zagreus in disguise. Zagreus did so after swallowing Kafli's core flame as instructed by Cipher. Well, they had stayed alive all this while thanks to Cipher's lie, and by right, they should be dead by now because Cipher's is dead. Having another core flame deep in their bottomless stomach allowed the Titan to live a bit longer. Now that Final had returned, they happily gave him the core flame, ingraining it in Final's mind that what saved Amphorius was not Kafli's so-called miracle or Oronyx's prophecies, but
it was the divine power of me, scorned by all, and the millennium-long lie of a cat-eared thief.
Then Trinon broke the water barrier of the Vortex of Genesis to send Finon there, draining themselves of the last drop of their power. As foretold, all of the Crisis heirs fell, leaving the last of them utterly alone to initiate the miracle of Genesis. Or so Finon had hoped to do until he found Lygus already waiting for him inside the vortex. Lygus told Finon to just ignore him. He was just a bystander. He was simply there to watch the conclusion of the epic in this particular cycle.
I will become the most loyal reader of the epics, a spectator voraciously consuming the valorous deeds of you heroes.
And then he started talking about having witnessed the same outcome over and over again, losing count of how many times it had happened, how many cycles of extrapolation he had watched over. He said the author of the epic would usually steal their pen at that point of the story. But then he started laughing as Cyrene walked into the place, and he wondered if the outcome of this particular cycle would be different. Sure it will, Cyrene said, because this would be a romantic story that had never come before. Now, this entire sequence is beyond intriguing. For one, Finon's name was redacted. We've always known that Finon is not his real name. His name in the secret ending is unknown. His drip marketing features a redacted word that could only be his real name. However, this was the first time that this fact was acknowledged in the quest itself. Did something happen between him entering the vortex and him arriving there? Is it because everybody who knew him as Finon was dead that there was no longer a need for him to use that name? And secondly, Finon looked way too relaxed when Cyrene showed up. He said that Cyrene had passed away. She was murdered by the Flame River. Why was Finon not freaking out when his dead friend showed up in front of him? Unless he imagined it all. Finon does seem to have quite a vivid imagination, as we've seen when he bid farewell to the Crisis heirs in his mind. Perhaps Cyrene was just one of those, and imagination served to encourage him to complete the prophecy. Thirdly, the cycle would be different. It would turn a new page, as Lygus called it. As he said, this is where the story usually ends in each cycle. The lone survivor would do what they're destined to do, triggering the miracle of Genesis, and that would start the new cycle. I've made a separate video on this, theorizing that Cyrene is the author of this epic and that the reset is the whole point of the Flame Chase journey. However, this time the outcome could be different. Cyrene, supposedly the author of the epic, showed up in front of Finon instead of silently watching him do what he must do at the end of the story. I think the presence of the Nameless on Amphorius is one of the factors that causes this alternate outcome. Furthermore, Herta was right to be cautious of Lygus. See, a projection of her and Skrulum showed up in Okima while all of this madness went down. Apparently, they managed to get in after taking down Lygus, who stood between them and the entrance to Amphorius. Herta believed Lygus that they fought was a fake body, and we did see him in the vortex afterwards. Perhaps what Herta and Skrulum took down was a data projection too. And speaking of the geniuses, a robot scepter was in Amphorius. Herta called it the source of Amphoris's tragedy. Whether she was referring to the Black Tide specifically or the creation of the planet as a whole, we don't know yet. I mean, Mem said that memories existed in everything, including all the building structures that started to crumble and turning holographic, which can be interpreted as everything in Amphorius was created from memories. The world is made up of memories extrapolated through endless cycles by the scepter. Or the entire world itself is a simulation created by the scepter. We did see Skrullum talking about a similar incident he experienced some Ember eras prior. What got me excited was this comment from Skrullum.
Conclusion. The butterfly has already flapped its wings.
That is a saying that is closely related to Polka Kakemont, member number 4 of the Genius Society, who is responsible for killing other Genius Society members, including Robert II, the creator of the Scepters. Maybe that is foreshadowing to Polka's appearance in Amphorius? Here's to hoping that we'll soon get to see Polka's in-game model. By the way, if you're wondering what a scepter is, who the heck Robert II is, the lore of it is featured in the Unknowable Domain, the latest expansion of the simulated universe from version 2.6. I have made 2 videos breaking down what happened there, including the history of the scepters and Robert II who created them. I will link them below if you want to learn more. This video was made by popular request from you guys who find my explanation easy to follow and make you understand the story better. I tried not to dump all of my speculations in here so it could pass as a version recap with a sprinkle of analysis along the way. Thumbs up if you find this video helpful and let me know what you think of the story so far. What do you think will happen to Finon in the future? Did you cry over pixels like I did? Which part made you cry the ugliest? Mine was when Finon failed to retrieve Aglaea's bracelet. So much for hoping I could keep that in my inventory. Let's cry some more in the comment section and I will see you in the next one.